majority of the ownership of or participation of foreign investors insofar as their natural resources and other public lands are concerned. And finally, Mr. Speaker, that is what I have been saying earlier. It is true that there was an increase of 7%. Unfortunately, that 7% increase in our economy will not be sufficient to answer all the need for the employment of our fellow Filipinos. And therefore, does it mean to say, Mr. Speaker, that we shall just stand idly and watch the sufferings of our fellow Filipinos doing nothing? I think as legislator and as true-blooded Filipinos, we must be proactive and therefore think of ways and means where we can improve the economy, where we could have more businesses, more foreign capital in such a way that we can reduce unemployment in our country.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. However, President Aquino kept on harping about this growth and that the government is in the right track towards economic salvation and that the recipe of this government towards economic development is a correct path. Are you saying that the President is wrong in this assessment and that there is really a need for charter change? Or is the President himself, in fact, supportive of charter change to open the economy up?
Well, I think, Mr. Speaker, the reasoning is misplaced. Indeed, as I have mentioned a while ago, there was really an increase of 7%. Of course, the President will not be saying that we are in the wrong economic path because definitely there was an increase. But what I am saying, that 7% or even 10% will not solve the problem pertaining to unemployment. We have to have more factories. We have to have more businesses. And therefore, we need capital. Unfortunately, these restrictive economic provisions, which were incorporated as early as in the 1935 Constitution, and which has been in existence for 89 years or 79 years, have not improved the economic aspect of businesses insofar as agriculture and factories are concerned, and therefore it is in this context that we are sponsoring this charter change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In that, there are many aspects of the economic problems mentioned by the distinguished sponsor during the sponsorship speech. One of which, of course, is the restriction. The restrictive provisions in the Philippine Constitution. The other is that there are monopolistic activities of rich Filipino elite who also hinder the exercise or the freeing of the economy from a burden, Mr. Speaker. May we know who are these monopolistic oligarchs that the distinguished sponsor mentioned? Who hinder the economic development of this country and that necessitates the need for an economic provision, charter change in the economic provision of the country's constitution, Mr. Speaker.
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, we do not have the list. However, let me state what would be the record.
Could we cite just an example? It seems that
No, I'm not complete yet, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Mr. Speaker.
The richest 1% of Filipinos account for 60% of the total gross domestic product, whose income, the income of the top 150,000 families equals the income of the bottom 6 million. Moreover, the wealth increase of the 40 richest families in the Philippines, according to Forbes Asia in 2011, is 76% of the absolute increase in GDP, way above that of Thailand at 33.37%, Malaysia 5.6%, and Japan 2.8%. And therefore, based on these figures, and if we open our eyes to existing realities, there are only few families who actually control the basic industries or the basic utilities in the Philippines. Meralco, for example, is a monopoly. When it comes to telecommunications, we have only 3 telecommunication companies. Globe, Smart, and Cellular. And these monopolies are actually not healthy in a democracy like the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But wouldn't foreign investors also result to the same monopoly, Mr. Speaker, considering that they have far larger capital than many of our local business people, Mr. Speaker? Wouldn't that create a worse situation where there is still a monopoly, but this time around, the monopoly is composed of foreigners who do not care one whit about the Filipino people as long as they earn profit in their investments in the country, Mr. Speaker?
Well, I don't think so, Mr. Speaker. Because insofar as foreign investments are concerned, I don't think that there will be a monopoly.
May we know the basis for that, Mr. Speaker?
Because there will always be free competition. And there are more foreigners who have the necessary capital, unlike the elite Filipino businessmen who are only a few insofar as number is concerned.
So there is no study whatsoever,
There is
Mr.
a study.
Speaker?
For example, let us take the case of Meralco.
I'm looking at the question, Mr. Speaker, is there a study that the foreign investors will not result in a monopoly here in the country when we allow them to enter our economy, Mr. Speaker?
Based on the experience of our Asian neighbors, no monopoly has been created when foreign investors were allowed.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to contest that. In poorer Asian countries, huge investors in mining, huge investors in public utility, huge investors in oil, they monopolize trade. In fact, Mr. Speaker, how do you call the 3 big oil companies in the country today? Are they not monopolies in the same manner that they monopolize the entire oil industry here, Mr. Speaker?
Well, that's the problem, Mr. Speaker. No less than my distinguished interpellator has stated that there are 3 oil companies only in the Philippines. Unfortunately, inasmuch as the provision is reserved only for Filipino citizens, insofar as oil exploration is concerned, definitely no Filipino corporation could compete with these 3 oil companies. On the other hand, if we allow foreign investors, there will be competitors, there will be competition insofar as the oil industry is concerned, and therefore, if there is competition, necessarily there will be lowering of prices and better quality.
I don't see any rule or law, Mr. Speaker, that prohibits Shell, Caltex, Petron, or any other big oil firms from also investing in our country. I don't see any connection there. The fact is they are allowed in here and they monopolize the oil industry. You mentioned, Mr. Speaker, that one of the provisions that we are going to revise is on the issue of land. No, you did mention lands kanina, and that just to confirm, under the Philippine Constitution, you would like foreign transnational corporations or foreign investors to own land. Am I correct, Mr. Speaker?
Well, as I have stated earlier, the constitutional change would be only that phrase unless otherwise provided by law.
Yes.
Of course, we cannot anticipate how the future Congresses will act on this provision in the event that flexibility in Congress is concerned. As a matter of fact, I expect that if the succeeding Congresses would be dominated by the BAYAN bloc, this provision in the Constitution might not be exercised.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The situation today is that under the Constitution, foreign investors, transnational corporations, or foreigners are not allowed to own lands. The proposal is that Congress may provide, am I correct, Mr. Speaker? Two things. One, Congress may not act at all and maintain the constitutional prohibition with regards foreign ownership of lands. Am I correct, Mr. Speaker?
Let me state the constitutional provision.
I'm just asking, Mr. Speaker, it is possible that
Mr. Speaker, do I have the right to answer in a manner I want to answer?
No, I
Or
would
my
just-
right to answer is subject to the whims and caprice or desire of the interpellator?
Mr. Speaker, I'm clarifying the question in case the gentleman didn't hear it. I'm just saying there are two things Congress can do here. One is to maintain the constitutional provision. That was just my first question. Of course, it's a yes, because Congress may decide one way or the other. So that's what I'm just asking, Mr. Speaker, to abbreviate the discussion. But if the distinguished gentleman wants to explain.
Let me answer it in this manner.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Under the House resolution, private corporations or associations may not hold such alienable lands of public domain except by lease for a period not exceeding 25 years, renewable for not more than 25 years, and not to exceed 1,000 hectares in area unless provided by law. And therefore, Congress in the Philippines may decrease the limitation. On the other hand, if there will be a sudden change in the economic factors in the country, Congress, by virtue of the supervening circumstances at the time discussion is made, if we really have a good economy, perhaps the 60-40 requirement might even be increased to 70-30 if the economy of the Philippines has already improved.
That's what I was trying to explain, Mr. Speaker.
And that is what I want to emphasize, the basis of my answer.
Because the distinguished sponsor didn't get the question. I was referring to Section 7, Mr. Speaker. And Section 7, I'd like a clarification from the distinguished sponsor. It says, save in cases of hereditary succession, unless otherwise provided by law, no private lands shall be transferred or conveyed except to individuals, corporations, or associations qualified to acquire or hold lands of public domain. That is in the resolution, Mr. Speaker. What does this mean, Mr. Speaker?
Well, what has been read by my dear colleague is very self-explanatory, most especially that my dear colleague happens to be a lawyer. In any event, let me clarify to satisfy the desire of my interpellator. Section 7 provides that under the present Constitution, private lands cannot be acquired by foreigners or foreign corporations except by hereditary succession. In the event that the charter change will push through and will be approved in a plebiscite, then Congress, by virtue of this charter change, can enact a law providing otherwise. Meaning to say that corporations or even foreigners can acquire private lands in the Philippines.
Thank you,
Of course, in the law, they can provide the stipulation that the land to be acquired by them shall be only used for their businesses.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
that would be the restriction that can be imposed by Congress for the purpose of protecting our national interest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So that could include, of course, agricultural lands, lands commercial purposes. Am I correct, Mr. Speaker? Of course, any equality says that what the Filipinos can buy, of course, the foreigners can buy if Congress will decide so otherwise.
Mr. Speaker, is my colleague referring again to Section 3 of Article 12, or is she already referring to Section 2 of Article 12 in order to have a meeting of minds insofar as the question and the answer are concerned.
Yes, I'm referring to still Section 7.
Section 7?
Ayon po sa konstitusyon natin, hindi, sabi niyo po, bawal ang mga bawal ang foreign corporations or investors na mag-own ng land unless otherwise provided by law. Tama po. Ngayon, pag pwedeng mag-provide ang Congress ng batas na pinapayagan na ang mga foreigners na magmamay-ari ng lupa. Tama po ba na pwedeng gawin ng Kongreso yon pag mapasa itong resolution na ito?
Mr. Speaker, ang tinatanong po ba ni Congressman Colmenares ay yung private lands o ibang klase ng lupa?
Private lands muna po.
Private lands?
Opo.
I have given the answer, Mr. Speaker, that in the event that this charter change would be approved, then Congress would have the flexibility, would have the necessary elbow room in order to enact a law allowing foreigners to own private lands, but subject to restrictions. Of course, we know the congressmen and the senators, pwede nilang ilagay, bagamat kayo ay binibigyan ng aming batas ng karapatan para mag-ari ng pribadong lupa, ang pwede nyo lamang bilhin at ariin ay yung kinakailangan para sa inyong negosyo. At pwede rin nilang ilagay, kung sakasakali nang hindi tumatakbo ang inyong negosyo, you have to surrender that private land to the government. And thirdly, private lands are immovable. They cannot be transferred from the Philippines to America. At higit sa lahat, pag ginawa ng negosyo yan, yung lupang yan, it becomes industrial or commercial in character, local governments would profit by paying the real estate tax, which is higher if the land is classified as industrial or commercial as compared when it is classified as agricultural.
So in that case, in that situation, Mr. Speaker, may isang Panginoong may lupa, may-ari siya say ng 20 hectares na lupa, pwede nang ibenta ang lupa sa foreigners if this law is passed, Mr. Speaker. Tama po?
Well, I'm glad, Mr. Speaker, na ang ginamit ng salita ng ating kaibigan ay pwede nang ipagbili. Of course, when we speak of ipagbili, it contract of sale and it presupposes that there will be willingness on the part of the seller to sell.
Yes.
In other words, the government does not have the right to expropriate the property and give it to foreigner.
Tama
So
po.
kung ang mga kababayan natin, sa tingin nila ayaw nilang ibenta ang lupa, kahit na merong gantong probisyon sa saligang batas, o may gantong probisyon sa batas na ginawa ng ating Kongreso, nonetheless, the foreigner or the foreign corporation cannot acquire private lands in the Philippines.
So sakop po ang agricultural lands sa proposal na ito. Malinaw po yan. Ngayon, ang sabi niyo po kanina, pwedeng maglagay ang Kongreso ng restrictions, pero pwede rin hindi maglagay ang Kongreso ng restrictions. Tama po ba? We cannot bind the next Congress on what they will do with the law, Mr. Speaker. Am I right?
Well, it is a basic truism for members of Congress and even for lawyers that we cannot pass irreparable laws. In the same manner, we cannot dictate upon future Congresses how they shall legislate, because we know that they have the sole legislative power, and that is always being addressed to the wisdom of future Congresses.
Yes.
And secondly, it would be an insult to say that future Congresses would be enacting laws which would be detrimental to the Filipino people.
Yes. At yung sinabi niyo po kanina, actually, na the Congress may pass a law with restrictions, hula-hula lang po yan. Tansya nyo lang yan, pero you don't really know for a fact that the Congress will provide such restrictions. Yun po ang punto dito kanina.
Ang punto po rito, Mr. Speaker, is that nobody can predict the future.
Yes.
Nobody can predict what future Congresses will do. Nobody can predict. It is even possible that the future Congresses might not exercise this power to legislate.
Yes. Yes,
Kaya nga
Mr.
po, ang sabi ko, itong charter change, this is not self-executing.
Yes.
Kahit na ito ay ma-approve, we are not yet opening our natural resources, our lands to foreigners. It is necessary that there must be an implementing law. We are just giving flexibility to Congress and the Senate to enact the necessary legislation demanded by the circumstances in order that we can improve the lives of our fellow citizens.
Yes. Pero tingnan natin, Mr. Speaker, mula sa ilang hearings na ginawa ng komite, hanggang sa resolusyon, hanggang sa sponsorship speech, opening up ng ekonomiya ang pinag-usapan. Kaya ang sinasabi dito ngayon na depende, sa totoo lang, set na po ang framework. Itagaman sa bato. Itagaman sa bato. Pag napasa ang CHACHA na ito, sigurado, ang Congress magpapasa ng batas opening up the economy. Why? The fact speaks for itself. They have always been saying restrictive kasi, dapat buksan. Kasi bias in favor of Filipinos, dapat buksan. After all these battles, pagdating pala ng ganong sitwasyon, hindi naman pala bubuksan. That is of no moment. Ang problema natin dito, Mr. Speaker, hindi ba maging sentro ng lobby groups ang Kongreso? What if one corporation lobbies here, gawin nyo kayang 100% dyan? And then another corporation the next year will lobby for something else. Another transnational corporation will say, open up nyo ito. Wouldn't Congress be the center of huge economic interest lobbying in Congress to the detriment of the interest of the Filipino people, Mr. Speaker?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that would be an insult to the members of future Congresses. Because as legislator and as public official, our primary aim, embodied in our hearts and in our mind, will be the welfare of our fellow citizens. Kung sa tingin ng Kongreso, nasusunod sa atin, kinakailangang mag-enact ng batas para bigyan ang mga foreigners na mag-invest sa Pilipinas. At sa kanilang tingin, yun ang kinakailangan para umunlad ang buhay ng ating mga kababayan, they will do that. At sinasabi sa umpisa pa lamang, ang pinag-uusapan dito ay economic provisions. That is true. Sapagkat pag pinag-usapan natin ang political provisions ng ating saligang batas, sigurado, sinasabi naman namin, hindi ito kasama dito. And thirdly, the latest survey made by Pulse Asia, which was made last March, 44% are in favor of the charter change insofar as economic provisions are concerned, only 19% are against it. This is the first time, ito ang kauna-unahang pagkakataon na pinag-uusapan ang charter change at malaking segment ng ating population ang pumapabor dito.
Na-mention nyo po
And finally, Mr. Speaker, I wish to emphasize that these proposals for charter change will be subject to a plebiscite. Kung sakaling papayagan to ng nakakarami ng ating mga kababayan sa isang plebisito, then Congress could make the necessary legislation. After all, it has the consent of the majority of the Filipino people. At kung sakasakali naman, sa plebisito ay ayaw nila, edi hindi ma-approve tong charter change.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Nabanggit niyo yung political amendments. At we're glad for the assurance of the distinguished sponsor na hindi kasama dito. And in fact, kung tingnan mo nga naman ang resolusyon, wala dito yung term extension or kaya mga political amendments katulad ng pagtanggal ng term limits. No? But as the majority leader, we've heard him in public saying, but no one can stop a member of this Congress during periods of amendment from standing up and saying, the Constitution says na ang term limits ng presidente ay isang 6-year term lang unless otherwise provided by law. Hindi ba pwedeng-pwede yan sa period of amendment? Pwedeng-pwedeng may tumayo dito ang term ng member ng Congress, 3 terms lang siya, 3-year period per term unless otherwise provided by law. The majority leader publicly said that you cannot control a member of this Congress from standing up and proposing such amendments. And as you mentioned kanina, at na-mention during the committee hearings, of course, pagbobotohan naman yan. So, at kung manalo ang boto na yan, talagang posibleng mangyari yan dito. And the distinguished sponsor, of course, can certify that he will vote against such a proposed amendment, but will surely be defenseless and helpless if more than a majority of this Congress will approve such a political amendment. So, nagpapasalamat kami sa assurance na yan, pero kung merong gawing ganyang political amendment, hindi yan masasagkaan ng distinguished sponsor dahil iisa lang po ang boto ng distinguished sponsor.